Hi there, and welcome to Coup English. In this series, we explore the lives of amazing people and help you improve your English at the same time. Ready? Let's dive in. Ludwig Wittgenstein, the philosopher of silence and logic. Chapter 1. The House of Wittgenstein. Ludwig Joseph Johann Wittgenstein was born on April 26, 1889, in Vienna, then part of the Austro-Hungarian Empire. He was the youngest of 8 children in a wealthy and cultured family. His father, Karl Wittgenstein, was one of the most prominent industrialists in Europe, known for building a steel empire that rivaled any on the continent. His mother, Leopoldine Kalmus, came from a successful Jewish family that had converted to Catholicism. The Wittgenstein household was not only rich in money, but also in intellectual and artistic pursuits. Their home was regularly visited by famous musicians such as Johannes Brahms and Gustav Mahler. The family encouraged creativity and excellence, but also demanded high performance. This pressure, combined with the family's perfectionism and strict expectations, shaped Ludwig's sensitive and intense personality from an early age. Ludwig's siblings were brilliant, but also troubled. 3 of his brothers died by suicide, a dark thread that would later haunt Ludwig's own emotional life. While the family supported intellectual ambition, they were also deeply private, rarely expressing feelings openly. This environment planted early seeds in Ludwig of emotional isolation, internal conflict, and a desire for absolute truth, traits that would define his philosophical work. As a boy, Ludwig was quiet and observant. He did not speak much, but showed a strong interest in mechanical things. He enjoyed building models and flying kites, and later developed an early fascination with engines and technology. His interest led him to study mechanical engineering in Berlin, and later aeronautics in Manchester, England. His early education was complicated. Though he came from a German-speaking background, he attended school among speakers of different dialects and social classes, which made communication difficult. This early struggle with language would later become central to his philosophy. Chapter 2. From Engineering to Philosophy. In 1908, Wittgenstein moved to Manchester to study engineering, focusing on the design of jet engines. He worked on experiments with kites at high altitudes and became interested in the mathematics needed for these tasks. It was during this time that he began reading works by the philosopher Bertrand Russell, particularly on the foundations of mathematics and logic. These readings had a profound effect on him. Mathematics and logic started to consume his mind. In 1911, he decided to leave engineering behind and moved to Cambridge to study under Russell himself. Ludwig was intense, passionate, and direct, which impressed Russell. Though his English was still developing, his questions were precise and his mind sharp. Russell later wrote that Wittgenstein was the most perfect example of a genius he had ever met. Wittgenstein soon immersed himself in the problem of logic and language. He wanted to find a system of rules that could explain how language connects to reality, a system as exact as mathematics. His desire was not just academic, but personal. He believed that solving these problems would bring clarity to his own life and the world. Despite being new to philosophy, Wittgenstein made fast progress. He spent long hours alone, thinking deeply, often pacing or sitting silently in his room. He kept notebooks full of brief, powerful remarks. These would later become part of his first major work, Tractatus, Logico-Philosophicus. Chapter 3. War and the Tractatus. When World War I broke out in 1914, Wittgenstein volunteered for the Austro-Hungarian army. He served in dangerous roles, including on the front lines and as an artillery officer. He carried philosophical texts, including Tolstoy's The Gospel, in brief, which deeply influenced his thinking during this period. Despite the horrors of war, Wittgenstein believed that suffering could lead to personal transformation. He wrote philosophical reflections in the trenches, continuing to develop his thoughts on logic and language. He also underwent a spiritual transformation, seeking simplicity and moral clarity. While in a war prison camp in Italy in 1918, he completed the manuscript of Tractatus Logico-Philosophicus. The book aimed to define the relationship between language and the world. It proposed that the structure of language reflects the structure of reality. One of its most famous conclusions was, "Whereof one cannot speak, thereof one must be silent." The Tractatus was published in 1921 with the help of Russell. It was written in a highly condensed, almost mystical style. Philosophers found it difficult, but intriguing. Wittgenstein believed he had solved all the problems of philosophy and withdrew from the field, giving away his fortune and seeking a simpler life. Chapter 4. The Quiet Years. After the war, Wittgenstein turned away from academic life. He gave away his inheritance to his siblings and began working as a schoolteacher in rural Austrian villages. His teaching methods were strict, and his high expectations sometimes led to conflict with students and parents. These years were difficult. Wittgenstein often felt isolated and out of place. He continued to struggle with depression and questioned his worth as a teacher. Yet, he also found time to work on building a house for his sister in Vienna, displaying remarkable attention to design and structure, another reflection of his passion for order and clarity. Though he had left philosophy, ideas continued to come to him. He began to question the views he had expressed in the Tractatus. He realized that language was not a rigid structure, but more like a set of tools used in different ways depending on the context. This insight led him back to philosophy with new questions and a new method. Chapter 5. Return to Cambridge. In 1929, Wittgenstein returned to Cambridge and resumed academic life. He was awarded a PhD for the Tractatus, and his oral examination was attended by Russell and G.E. Moore. It was a formality. Both examiners admitted he knew more philosophy than they did. He became a fellow at Trinity College and began to lecture. His teaching style was unconventional. He spoke slowly, often pausing for long periods. He rarely used notes and expected students to follow his train of thought. Though many found him difficult, others were inspired by his depth and intensity. Wittgenstein was also a difficult colleague. He was intense, highly critical, and often harsh. But he had a circle of devoted students, including Norman, Malcolm, and Elizabeth Onscombe, who would help preserve and publish his later works. During this time, he began working on what would become his second major book, Philosophical Investigations. He never published it during his lifetime, continuing to revise and rethink it for years. Chapter 6. The New Philosophy. Wittgenstein's later philosophy broke away from the ideas of the Tractatus. He now believed that the meaning of words depended on their use in specific language games. He emphasized that language is a part of life, not a mirror of the world. This approach was revolutionary. He rejected the idea of a single logical structure behind language. Instead, he saw language as a family of activities, each with its own rules. He argued that many philosophical problems arise from misunderstandings about how language works. His later work was more relaxed in tone, filled with examples and thought experiments. He explored how we learn language, how we follow rules, and how meaning is shared. These insights opened new paths in philosophy, psychology, and linguistics. Wittgenstein's new ideas were not widely accepted at first. Many found them difficult to understand, but over time, they became central to analytic philosophy. His influence grew, and his lectures attracted students from around the world. Chapter 7. Solitude and Suffering. Throughout his life, Wittgenstein remained a solitary figure. He struggled with relationships, identity, and faith. He was often tormented by guilt, self-doubt, and intense emotions. He kept his personal life private but hinted in his diaries at deep inner conflicts. He never married and is believed to have had homosexual relationships, which he kept hidden due to the conservative culture of his time. These experiences added to his sense of isolation. Despite his fame in academic circles, he often rejected honors and avoided publicity. He lived simply, sometimes in a small cottage in Norway where he could focus on thinking and writing. His personal suffering gave his work a unique tone. He saw philosophy not as a subject of theories but as an activity that could help people see clearly. He wrote not to explain the world, but to help others find peace in it. Chapter 8. Final Years and Legacy. In the 1940s, Wittgenstein's health declined. He continued to work on his manuscripts but became increasingly ill. In 1947, he resigned from his position at Cambridge and moved to Ireland, seeking solitude. He spent his final years writing in notebooks, reflecting on topics ranging from the mind and psychology to ethics and aesthetics. He visited friends, including his former students, and maintained correspondence. His last writings showed a softer, more human voice. In 1951, he was diagnosed with prostate cancer. He spent his last days in the home of his doctor and friend, Dr. Bevan. On April 29, 1951, he died peacefully. His final words were, "Tell them I've had a wonderful life." After his death, his students published philosophical investigations and other works. These texts transformed 20th century philosophy. Wittgenstein is now regarded as one of the greatest philosophers of all time. Chapter 9. The Philosophy of Language. Wittgenstein's central contribution was to the philosophy of language. In the Tractatus, he proposed that language mirrors reality. In his later work, he showed that language is much more flexible and complex. His idea of language games showed how words get their meaning from the way they are used. This insight helped explain how we understand each other, make mistakes, and learn from experience. It also showed why some philosophical questions are so difficult. They often come from using language in the wrong way. He helped shift philosophy from a search for abstract truths to a careful look at everyday language. This method influenced later philosophers like Quine, Austin, and Rorty, and shaped fields like linguistics and cognitive science. Wittgenstein's style was unique, short, sharp statements, often in the form of questions. He wanted readers to think for themselves. Rather than giving answers, he wanted to change the way people look at problems. Chapter 10. A Life Beyond Words. Wittgenstein's life was filled with contradictions. A wealthy man who gave away his fortune, a soldier who sought peace, a philosopher who doubted philosophy. He lived with intensity and demanded truth in every part of life. Though difficult and at times harsh, he inspired deep loyalty in those who knew him. His honesty, courage, and dedication to thought made him stand out. He never settled for easy answers and remained a seeker until the end. Today, Wittgenstein's work is studied not just for its content but for its spirit, a spirit of seriousness, clarity, and respect for the complexity of life. He showed that language is both powerful and limited, and that silence, too, can speak volumes. His legacy continues to grow, not only in philosophy, but in the way we think about communication, understanding, and the human condition. Thanks for learning with Ku English. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Until next time.